Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm joined by my gorgeous girlfriend, this thing.
Hi.
And then you say, I'm joined by this thing, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a little video about how to be more feminine as a woman. Any women listening, you might find this a little bit fun. We have basically asked ChatGPT, which gives a lot of mainstream advice. We've said, hey, how can a woman be a little bit more feminine if that's something that she's into, if that's something she wants to improve? And we love to ask ChatGPT because it gives really like mainstream sort of generic advice sometimes, and sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's maybe not so good. So we like to get in there, say what we would do a little bit different from the mainstream. We're not always super mainstream here on this channel. And any guys listening, you might find this an interesting idea of like some green flags to look for in a woman. So it's fun to get an idea of where the mainstream is at. I already did a video similar to this called How to Be More Masculine according to AI. So that's this video right here. Just search for the word masculine on my channel and you can watch that. So, Imi, first question before we even get started, is femininity something that means something to you? Is it like important for you? Is it something you care about, being feminine?
It's definitely something that I guess, conscious of. I
Mm-hmm.
think as a woman that wants to be attractive to men, because I'm attracted to men and I would like them to be attracted to me, I am conscious of like the way that I present myself, and I'm aware that like traditional femininity and like feminine characteristics are typically what's attractive to a lot of heterosexual men. And I think I've naturally enjoyed a lot of aspects of femininity. I like those parts of myself, whether that's just softness or sweetness or looking pretty. Like I love clothes and I like houses looking nice. Like
You like women shit. You like cupcakes. You like nice clothes and dresses.
yeah, I'm somebody that is probably pretty traditionally feminine, and yet at the same time I probably do somewhat masculine things when it comes to maybe like hobbies.
Yeah, you're into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, rock climbing.
Yeah, I like that maybe parts of my femininity balanced out with more masculine aspect as well. I like a, a reasonable level of independence
Mm.
and being able to do things myself, I guess. So we're not talking like, ultra 1950s type femininity, but it is something that's important to me, and I feel good when I feel in touch with my feminine side, especially when I'm doing things that help me get in touch with my body, whether that's pole dancing or getting all dressed up. Like I really enjoy indulging in those things. And at the same time, I think maybe it's worth putting in like a caveat of like, if you don't want to be super traditionally feminine, that's cool. And there's plenty of men or women that are into women that aren't super traditionally feminine.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I talked about in this video again, how to be more masculine. AI has the answers. In that, I said people have this concept of masculinity and what it should be, and that definition changes depending on the culture you're in, depending on your background, depending on the era and the history and the time in which you're born. Like literally, the number or the date on the calendar determines people's idea of masculinity. The same exact concept applies to femininity. If this was the 1920s, yeah, being feminine would be stay at home, you're a mother, dress all pretty, dress in nice dresses, don't be too much of a quote slut, don't show your ankles out in public, you fucking slut,
The
showing
20s,
off.
they were showing their ankles off
Oh, whores. Were they? Really?
because that's
Sluts, whores,
when
demonetized now.
hemlines rose to like mid
Oh, that's
calf
disgusting. No, I'm not okay with that.
up to the
Cover
navel.
this up. You shouldn't be showing this. The point being, depending on the time and the era and the culture and the country you're in and your group of friends and society's views at that point in time, the concept of femininity and masculinity is very fluid. Even though it's funny, people will put so much shame and guilt on each other. They'll say, you're not being a real man. A real man should do this. A real woman should do this. Be a good girl. Be a good man. Be, all of that kind of stuff. That shit's fluid. Those definitions are fluid. If I go to a different country, they will shame me for a different thing that I'm not being. You're not being a man enough in this country because you're not hyper masculine and aggressive. And then over in this Western country, no, being a real man means you're not hyper aggressive and you're not hyper violent. You're literally the opposite. You're the patriarchal sort of, and I mean that in a positive way, gentle caregiver, head of the family, looking after women. So yeah, the definition of masculinity and femininity will change depending on where you are, which is why the main thing that we're probably going to say a lot in this podcast today is being feminine is up to you. In other words, figure out who you want to be, who your ideal self is, and then move towards that. The only caveat I would add there is do your best to make sure you're not harming anyone else. You know, we're here to make the world a slightly happier, better, more love-filled place, but masculinity and femininity is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the prompt that I used is, hey, ChatGPT, I'm doing a YouTube video that'll be fun and entertaining, hopefully. This title is this, How Women Can Be More Feminine According to an AI. You're obviously the AI I'm referring to. Give me your best advice, and I'm going to do a video on it, basically rating how good I think your advice is, adding my own, blah, blah, blah. The answer it gave is, femininity is a complex concept, exactly what we just said at the start of this video, so is masculinity, and varies greatly across different cultures and individuals. Look at ChatGPT, just, it knows its shit for once.
Taking the words out of your mouth.
Yeah. A lot of the time, ChatGPT is pretty good, which is why we did do these videos, but yeah, sometimes the mainstream is maybe not what we would advise, and so we'll talk about that in a second. It is important to emphasize that there is no right or wrong way to be feminine, even though hundreds, thousands, millions of people will tell you that there is a right way of being feminine. Then you go to a different culture or a different time or a different place or a different country, and that definition will change. What matters most is that you are true to yourself. Holy fuck. Yes. And that your own personal identity. Holy shit. Here are some general traits and behaviors often associated with traditional areas of femininity. Number 1, grace. This could involve the way you move, speak, or carry yourself. It's about having a sense of calmness and elegance. Ooh, fancy. Grace can also be reflected in how you handle situations, showing patience and tolerance. That sounds like basic stoicism. I would say that applies to men too.
Yeah, I will notice that with a lot of these words, I think some of them are a bit like ephemeral, like they're not super
They
tangible.
haven't like given a proper definition of that word, and so it's up to interpretation.
Like elegance is a very broad term that can mean very, and like how does one be elegant? Like
You just be elegant. It's like, okay, it's like the male self-improvement advice when they're just like, hey, bro, just be confident. Walk up to a woman and just be confident. You're like, yeah, but how do I be confident? Bro, confident people don't have to ask. Just be confident, bro. And you're like, I don't know what to do and I'm scared. Help. It's kind of like that. If you're a woman, you're like, I don't know how to be more elegant. What do I do? It's like, just be elegant. Come on, you're not being elegant.
yeah, and I think maybe other words that we could use, or maybe more tangible things that might reflect grace, could be, yeah, like you said, almost stoicism. Like being able to, I guess it does say here, like react calmly to things and being sure of yourself, like having a level of confidence and self-assurance. And I guess if you're talking about physical grace as well, like the way that you hold yourself, kind of like standing up straight and doing actions or moving your body physically in a way that's calm and intentional, and you're kind of sure of where you're going. Like maybe a good opposite would be like 18-year-old Imi, who was a bit neurotic and all over the place and a bit frantic at times in the way that I might do things. So the
You've
opposite of
definitely
that.
become a lot more elegant over time, yeah, with practice. So what things have you done to become more elegant? If somebody listening is, you know, a woman and they're like, I want to be more elegant, or a guy is in a relationship or about to have a relationship with a girl and he's like, my girlfriend wants to be more feminine, more elegant. How can I help her with that? What did you do?
I think a lot of it boils down to being confident and knowing what you're doing.
How do you be confident?
Well, if you didn't interrupt, I was going to
My job
continue
is to
and
interrupt.
say
You know I'm Andy, I interrupt.
that a lot of confidence is just practicing doing a thing a lot of times until you're good at it and you don't have to think about it too much and you know what you're doing. So for example, when I, turned 18, first moved out of home, was doing a lot of new things for the first time, whether that was going to job applications or setting up like my utilities with the electricity company. Like when I first was doing those things, I was very nervous because I was unsure of what to do. I didn't know how to handle myself. And so I probably did come across as not very graceful and a little bit frantic and unsure of myself. But now, like when I'm speaking on the phone or I'm doing something, or a lot of things that I do in my daily life, it's only because I've practiced them so many times that you could say they're done with a little bit more grace, a little bit more confidence or self-assurance.
I would almost say with this one, like this just applies to general self-improvement. And I said the same thing in the other video that I did on, how to be more masculine according to the mainstream, according to ChatGPT. a lot of this shit, like how do I be more masculine? How do I be more feminine? You could almost just replace that with how do I just be more confident? How do I just be a happier person? And yeah, like you said, you're basically just saying the 3-step formula that we say for every goal and all success. Give yourself permission to suck at the start. Take little baby steps towards your goal every day so you practice and you get better at stuff, and then just keep going. You know, I would say grace is the same word as when we're talking about men, confidence. That like fucking confident, stoic man who can just handle situations. Like we said, handle situations. That's stoicism. You know, showing patience and tolerance. That's stoicism. So read a whole bunch of stoicism books. I say this all the time whenever I do content on stoicism. I say this stuff applies to women as much as men. This is just general self-improvement advice. So stoicism books to start with. My Play to Win video course is literally a course about stoicism. You can listen to Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, any of the old stoics. Byron Katie is probably my favorite stoic, and she's a woman. She's still alive today. She's like in her 80s, and she teaches stoicism. That's even more applicable here because she's a woman. And not that you can only learn from women if you're a woman, but like it's nice to hear it. I would say she's very graceful, and I would say she's very elegant, and I would say she's very feminine. She's incredibly fucking feminine, but she's also a bit of a badass, and she has boundaries, and she handles situations amazingly. She's so graceful. So yeah, I would almost replace this whole one and say this isn't femininity. Just work on loving yourself a bit more. Just take some baby steps towards who you want to be, and then you become more confident as you become more of a badass. And being a badass is just you've worked on goals and you've achieved some things and you're taking some baby steps.
And focusing on this last sentence as well, when it talks about showing patience and tolerance, I think a lot of that comes, another word that I might use is just like kindness, whether that's for yourself or situations or other people. And I think generally speaking, a lot of that comes down to being in a good place yourself.
Yeah, lacking yourself, being happy, having achieved a little bit of success. Yeah.
Enjoying your own life. And it's so much easier to not care about the person that cuts you off in traffic or the car that maybe is a bit heavy on their horn or any number of things that you could find like annoying, like when you're stuck in a queue. Like it's so much easier when you like your life and you're happy in yourself to be patient and be tolerant and handle those situations with grace. And a lot of that time that comes down to looking after yourself.
Yeah.
Doing the things that you want to be doing and also practice. Like and reflection. Like it might take something pissing you off 50 times until you look at the situation. You're like, all right, do I want to keep being annoyed by this for the rest of my life? And
most people would answer yes to that question. Yes, I do. I fucking hate whatever this is. I'm going to be angry about it forever.
Yeah, and some people will complain about the weather that comes around once every year, every single year without fail until the day that they die. Or you can, choose to find peace in it and let go and accept it. But that requires intention and maybe a challenging of the thought. So like asking yourself, like, is this really a bad thing? Is it okay if this happens? Like, can I sit with some of the feelings that are coming up when I'm in this undesirable situation and let those feelings go? Like, let those feelings pass through me and let them kind of move on so that I can get on with my day rather than sitting in those feelings, getting really caught up with them and obsessing about them and telling yourself the story that this is bad, this shouldn't be happening. I hate it when this happens.
Yeah, again, that just feels like general self-improvement advice. I'd, tell men if you want to do all that same stuff. Yeah. All right, number 2, empathy. Being understanding and empathetic is often associated with femininity. This means genuinely caring about others' feelings and being able to sympathize with their experiences.
Yeah, I think definitely there is the sense that being in touch with your traditional feminine energy is being in touch with your emotions and your feelings as well as the emotions and feelings of other people.
Others,
yeah, and so empathy is obviously exactly that. It's being able to relate to other people. And I think it's also got a lot of like maternal undertones, like being nurturing and motherly and caring. And again, I think this actually is very similar to the previous point in that being able to do this often just comes from being happy and loving yourself, because when you're feeling good in yourself, you have energy to give other people's and to be there for other people and to relate to them. But when you're stuck in your own shit, it's really hard to care about what other people are going through when you're so focused on what's going on in your own life.
So how would someone build empathy, which by the way, I think is an incredibly useful tool for men as well. Being able to be in touch with your own feelings and other people, being able to understand people, that helps you as a man so freaking much. But if a human being wanted to be more empathetic, What have you done to increase your empathy?
I think often it just, maybe at first it feels a little bit more forced, but like in social situations or when you're having interactions with other people, asking like, how is this, like asking about them, like removing the focus on yourself and being like, all right, how's this other person feeling in this
Yeah,
situation? Or like,
yeah.
how are they going? And sometimes it might just be like before you're about to catch up with a friend. Sometimes I do this. Like I have certain friends where I notice that I talk about myself more. You could say maybe a little bit too much. And so before those interactions, sometimes I like remind myself or I consciously have the thought of like, all right, make sure you ask questions about them. Ask them how you're going. Don't keep talking, just pause and listen and wait to see if they have anything to say. Like a lot of the time, I think that's just a good starting point. And then I think as that becomes more practice, it does feel less forced and less clinical. And it's naturally you just want to ask about other people and how they're going and just getting their input, hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, and this is an incredibly useful skill, like I said, for men as well. If you're on a date with a woman and you're able to actually give a fuck about what she's talking about, holy crap, the date goes 10 times better. If you're about to go into the bedroom and you can see she's a bit nervous, if you have some basic empathy or even some, a little bit more advanced empathy, if you're able to say, hey, I can sense you're a little bit nervous, like, is everything okay? Do you want to talk a little bit before we have sex? Like, what's up? You can tell me. Then she gets to share what she's feeling. She gets to tell you, yeah, I'm just a little bit nervous and I haven't done this for a while or I haven't done this much at all. And you go, sweet, like, what would you like to do? What do you want to do? And she'll go, well, is it okay if we just make out for a little bit and go slow? You're like, hell yeah, we'll go slow. And you get to take your time a little bit. She's now on the same team as you. You guys are communicating, you're talking. You end up having far better sex because of it, because you're not like pushing someone to do something they don't want to do. So empathy is incredibly useful. I like what you said about before you're about to hang out with your friends, you will essentially practice and give yourself a little pep talk almost of like, all right, I want to practice my empathy when I'm hanging out with this person. Like setting that intention, which is what that is, having that intention before you hang out with someone and saying, okay, I want to do my best to ask them questions, figure out what they're doing, to listen to them a little bit more instead of interrupting, which is something I'm not always perfect with. I interrupt you all the time. I interrupt my coaching clients. So that's proof right there that you don't have to be perfect with your empathy. I'm not. But setting that intention before you hang out with someone is really, really helpful. And don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect. Like empathy applies to you as much as anyone else. The Buddha had a really good quote. You yourself, as much as anyone else in the universe, deserve your love and compassion and empathy. But this is something I do before all of my coaching calls too. I will literally sit there for like 10 minutes and I'll just put on some chill music and I'll think, okay, what has this client been going through? What did we talk about last week? Who are they? What are their fears? What are their doubts? What are their insecurities? What are their goals? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? I try and put myself in their shoes as best as I can. You can't ever do that perfectly. We can't be someone else, but I will do my best to try and get as close to being fully empathetic with them as I can. And I've just found that helps my coaching calls so much. I do the same before my group coaching calls once a week. I will think about the group and where everyone's at and what they're doing and all of that before someone is about to ask me a question, or as they're asking the question in my head, I'm going, okay, like where are they right now? What are they feeling? What is the intention behind their question? Are they in a place of shame and guilt right now? How can I address that? Even if they didn't directly ask me about that, I'm basically trying to figure out what emotions they're currently feeling. And if I don't know, because I might be on the autism spectrum, there's a little bit of autism in this beautiful soul. I will often say, hey, like, what are you feeling right now? Like, you don't have to fucking mind read with this shit. And in fact, one of the most empathetic things you can ever do is say, how are you feeling? I think people almost misunderstand empathy as like, I should be able to mind read and that's empathy. It's like, no, motherfucker, like that's an advanced stage of empathy that you might not be at. And so start with just asking, hey, I'm fucking Captain Autismo here. I don't know what the fuck you're feeling right now because I can't mind read. What are you feeling right now? And then they'll tell you.
And
Do you
then,
want to talk about this? And then they'll tell you.
yeah, and the next stage is then just listening. A lot
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
time it's
yeah.
just like
Yeah.
listening and being there. Like it doesn't actually require you problem solving or doing anything beyond that. And often when people are going through things, they don't want you to problem solve. They just
They want you to shut the
want
fuck up and
someone,
listen.
yeah, to be there for them.
How long did that take me to figure out?
I mean, we're still working on it
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, because I'm captain, I must fix everything. Like a lot of men, that's just, I think that's a very masculine trait. Not all men, but like a lot of men are just like, if someone shares their emotions with me, I got to fucking fix it. Here's how you take action. Here's what you do. I got you. Don't worry. We're going to beat this. But a lot of like women, especially, but people in general, will share their feelings, share their struggles, and literally all they want to know is that they're not alone, that you give a fuck, that you're just there for them. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to solve anything. And that took me a long time because you would often share with me and I go, all right, okay, let's conquer this. Let's beat this. Let's do this. And you're like, but I already feel better for having just shared it with you. And I'm like, no, like we need to take action. We need to make sure you never feel like this ever again
Yeah.
because emotions are bad and you should never feel any negative emotions.
It can feed the story of feeling like broken or like something is wrong
I
with
was
you.
basically communicating to you that something's wrong here because you're feeling a negative emotion. You must be broken and I have to fix you.
Yeah, and then it meant that I didn't necessarily want to share with you all the time, and then there would be days where you got the sense that I wasn't fully sharing, and then you'd be like, why aren't you sharing with me? Like you're pushing me away, and
Yeah, share with me, bitch. Then I can fix it. And you're like, I don't want you to fix it. God damn it. I just feel some emotions and I want to know that I'm not alone in feeling these emotions.
so a lot of empathy can be distilled down to asking and then listening.
And here's the cheat code, men and women, but probably especially men. Whenever someone shares with you, it can be like a male friend or a female or a girlfriend or anyone. Whenever someone shares with you, if you're not sure what they want, which is most of the time, I don't know what fucking people want. I've been doing this coaching thing for years. How am I supposed to know what someone wants? Here's your cheat code. You say, what would you like from me right now? That's your fucking cheat code to everything. If you guys can just drill that into your head and you go around life, whenever you see someone struggling, whenever you see someone suffering, whenever someone tells you about problems, whenever someone's upset or angry or they feel like they're bottling things up and you can tell they're kind of closed off and they're not sharing with you or they're not telling you what's up, you say, what's up? And they say, nothing, don't worry about it. If you just say, is there anything you would like from me right now? Or what would you like from me right now? They will fucking tell you the answer. They'll give you like the perfect answer. They'll be like, I just want to be alone. You're like, sweet, I'll leave you alone. You can just text me if you want me to hang out with you again. Or they'll say, I just want a hug. And you go, sweet, here's your hug. And you give them a hug. Or I kind of want to talk about this, but I don't know how to start talking about it. Okay, cool. What would you like from me to help you start talking about this? How can I help you? Like, what would you like? I say this in my coaching program all the fucking time. Like, literally, probably 5 times a week, someone will make a post in the group and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And I will say, what would you like from us to help you? And sometimes they're like, nothing. I just appreciate being able to talk about it. And you're like, sweet, talk about it as much as you want, bro. Or they'll say, I want motivation. I want you guys to give me a pep talk and tell me that I can do it. Sweet, here's your motivation. Or they will say, can we talk about it on the next group coaching call when I can give more information? And you're like, hell yeah. I even do this before my actual coaching calls or closing calls to sign someone up for coaching. When I can see that they're hesitant about signing up for the coaching program, I could push them in that moment. I could use sales techniques and all that kind of bullshit. But I will say, what would you like from me right now, my friend? And sometimes they're like, nothing. I think I just want to go away and think about the coaching program and figure out if I want to do it. And I'm like, sweet. What would you like for me to help you with that? Would you like me to email you in 2 weeks and see where you're at? Do you want me to just leave you alone and you can email me if you want to, or don't email me if you don't want to? You don't owe me anything. Like, what would you like from me? And sometimes people will say, I'm just scared, man. I want to sign up for the coaching, but it's a lot of money and I'm really scared. And I go, that's okay. Lots of people are scared. What would you like from me right now? And sometimes they're like, I just want you to tell me that this isn't a stupid decision. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you it's not a stupid decision. This is up to you. Would you like to explore that, whether or not it's a good or a bad decision for you? What would make it a good decision? What would make it a bad decision? Let's talk through that. I want to make sure that you're on board because you want to be, not because I told you to do this decision. And so I ask them, like, what do you want from me? What would you like from me? I do that on the coaching calls all the time. It's really, really useful.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that people aren't always going to be perfect at
Yeah,
telling
so you can
you
just keep
what it is
asking
they
the
want.
question. Yeah, you keep
Yeah.
prompting.
Yeah, the more you ask the question, I think the better people around you get at answering it.
And you can offer stuff. Like, you're right. Sometimes you'll say, what would you like from me? And the person's like, I don't know. And then you can say, well, would you like a hug? And they'll think about it for a bit and they'll be like, no, I don't think I want that. Okay. Do you want me to just listen to you? And they'll go, no, I don't think I want to talk right now. Do you want me to talk then? No, I don't really feel like listening to advice right now. Okay. Would you like me to give you some space? No, I don't really think I want to be alone right now. And you're like, cool. Do you want to just fucking hang out, watch some TV, chill? We don't have to talk about this. We can talk about some other shit, but I'll just be around you so you don't feel alone. And they're like, yeah, that sounds nice. And so you do that. So sometimes you have to prompt a little bit. And number 3, nurturing. A traditionally feminine trait is being nurturing. This could mean taking care of people around you, including children, family members, or friends, or it could mean caring for plants or pets. Ta-da! We got a plant here, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of my house plants that you look after.
Because Andy's incapable of looking after houseplants.
I'm capable of it. I just don't want to do it.
That was in my eyeball.
But yeah, I have so many plants and you look after them and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and the thing, we said this before in the previous point, like that kind of maternal energy. It is that nurturing, looking after people. Like just think of being a mother. It does require caring for something else, and I think that's whether that's with children or with anything else, that's very traditionally feminine. And I would say with this one, only care for other people or things if you want to. Like there's absolutely no point in caring for anything other than yourself if you don't want to, because then it's not going to be coming from a good place. It's going to be coming from
resentment.
Yeah, a resentful place. And there's no point in that. Like other people will be much happier them caring for themselves than somebody caring for them if that person doesn't want to be doing that, because that resentment always comes out. But if it is something that you feel inclined towards, like absolutely go for it. And it is definitely something that you can like step up. I like that this also mentioned like plants or pets, like, but you can also care for like non-living things, like caring for the home and keeping sure it's making
That's
sure
a
it's
very like traditionally considered feminine trait, is like looking after the home.
Yeah, and you could even say like looking after is kind of a bit tangential, but like your own appearance and like just taking care in things or things around you, whether that's yourself or externally. And yeah, you can kind of step it up. So that could be plants, and then that could be a goldfish, and then that could be a rabbit or a cat. And you kind of work it up to like then other people or a partner or children. Like it's definitely something that like if you jump straight into it, if you don't have that strong like maternal instinct, it might be a little bit hard to be like nurturing and caring for children. Like I'm only able to interact with small children now because I've worked with kids in various jobs
For years,
Yeah, for
You've
years
worked
and
a lot of
years.
jobs where you
Well,
look after kids,
teaching and nannying. And so now that when I interact with like my 2-year-old niece, that feels okay. Whereas my little brother, who's a few years younger than me, like he's never done anything with small children. And so he goes to like interact with
I could
our
imagine him
niece,
being
and he
so
just like
awkward,
he doesn't know what to do. But it's not because I have some natural maternal instinct. It's been a practice thing. And my very first swim teaching job, which was my very first job that I ever had, it was super awkward and I didn't know what to do.
You were teaching children to swim, to be clear,
Yeah, and you just had to figure it out and keep practicing, and eventually you find your own rhythm with it. And I feel like there's no one way to nurture or care for other things. Like for example, I'm not super like babyish with children. I kind of talk to them like little adults in a gentle way, and I obviously use language that's a bit more approachable, and I might be a bit softer in the way that I speak, or I don't speak as fast, but I don't baby kids. And so everyone has a different version of nurturing. I think that's actually where like the idea of like love languages can play out. Like the idea of caring or giving love or nurturing can play out in different ways. For some people that might be like physical affection. For some people that might be like doing acts of service, like cooking or cleaning or being of service. Like that idea of nurturing can take form in different ways. It depends what resonates best with you.
And to be very clear, we said this at the start, we'll say this probably another 10 times. None of this is us telling you what you have to do. Even ChatGPT specifically started this by saying there is no like one size fits all to femininity. At the end of the day, figure out who you want to be, what your ideal is, and work towards that. Same for any of you guys listening when it comes to masculinity. Figure out who the fuck you want to be. Again, the only caveat I would add in there is try and be kind to other people, be a decent human being, don't do things that will hurt other people, because that always comes back around to you and makes your life significantly worse. You go around hurting a bunch of people, they want to get revenge on you, and then your life sucks in return. Plus, it feels good to be nice to people. But other than that, within those confines of like, let's make the world slightly better, fuck man, do you. Be whoever you want to be. Same with being a woman. Be whoever you want to be. I would say with this one, with nurturing, this is something that men can do too. I take a very nurturing role to my content, to, the stuff you're watching right now, to my coaching, absolutely. And I take that sort of patriarchal, like the traditional positive word for patriarchal.
Just
like
like paternal instead
paternal,
of patriarchal.
Yeah. Paternal is a good word, yeah. It's like that loving father. Patriarch just means head of the family. it's kind of got a very negative use now. People are like, the patriarchy. And it's like, you mean the head of the family who looks after the rest of the family? I'd love to live in a patriarchy. That sounds nice. I'd love to live in a matriarchy too. If the women were looking after the world, either way, that sounds nice. But yeah, I think men can be very nurturing and paternal too. I try to be as much as I can.
And circling this back to something that we said at the start, like if this is something like if you're working on being more feminine, and often I think maybe that can come from a place of like wanting to attract more traditionally masculine men. I think this is definitely a quality. Like if you're looking to start a family, or if you're looking for a traditionally masculine man to be part of like a husband or a father, I think often there is like people are seeking out that nurturing aspect, because there's obviously the sense of like if a guy is looking for a woman to be the mother of his children, generally speaking,
Yeah,
you're
100%.
screening for
Yeah.
nurturing traits to be sure that this woman can like is going to be a kind, nurturing mother.
Hmm.
So it's definitely like with all of these things, obviously there's going to be men that are attracted to more feminine or more masculine women. But if you as a woman are somebody that is seeking out a more traditional relationship or a traditional household or wanting a more masculine partner, then I think encouraging or emphasizing aspects of your femininity can help.
Number 4, expressiveness. Being open about your feelings and emotions can be considered a feminine trait. This doesn't mean being overly emotional and crying all the fucking time and like blah, 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 but rather being in tune with and able to express your feelings in a healthy way. I'd say this applies to men too. Like it helps men being able to express themselves.
Sure, but it is considered a more
Yeah,
traditionally
fair
feminine
enough. Yeah.
trait. And it's like I mentioned in the beginning, like I think it's positive to have a healthy balance of traditionally feminine and traditionally masculine traits within you, whether you're a man or a woman.
Yeah.
Like I find a balanced person, or like the idea of like the modern man or the modern woman is that she's
The
going,
Renaissance man. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
is that they're going to have traits of both to make you a more balanced, well-rounded person. Because obviously when you go to the very extreme of the spectrum of masculinity or femininity, like there can be negative traits.
Outcomes that you might not want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Consequences. Like if you're a woman and you're hyper emotional,
Mm.
and you just scream and cry and like somebody cuts you off in traffic and so like you ram their car because you have a breakdown, I think we could all agree that there would be some consequences for that that you might not want. And then masculinity, if you're so hyper fucking masculine, the traditional concept of masculinity where you don't share your emotions ever, like my father used to be, like your father still is to some extent, they just can't share any emotions. They're just emotionally fucking stunted. That has severe consequences too. It's very hard to keep a relationship or keep a relationship healthy and happy and you're both having a good time if you literally can't talk about anything, let alone your feelings, or anytime you're feeling something, you just bottle it up and suppress it, then you're running away from, out of fear, the emotion. You're not dealing with the problem if you're fucking bottling it up and self-medicating and all of that. So yeah, the extremes are sometimes fun to look at and say, okay, that's the extreme. Maybe I don't want the consequences of that hyper masculine or hyper feminine. Where do I want to be on that spectrum? And that's up to all of you to decide. Like you can decide who you want to be. But if someone wants to express I would say I think most women are pretty good at expressing their emotions. For them, for a lot of women, maybe the challenge is more, how do I do that in a quote, healthy way or a way where there aren't consequences that I don't want? In other words, how do I be a little bit more graceful, a little bit more stoic, a little bit more almost calm in my expressions of my emotion? What helped you? Because you used to just be hyper emotional. You were really hyper emotional and anxious and neurotic and all of that. What's helped you?
I mean, I'm still quite anxious
But I'd say
and
you're very graceful and calm in your expression of that now. You're very calm when you say, honey, I'm feeling really stressed today. Can we please talk about it? Like, you're so fucking rational. What helped?
I think with all of this stuff, again, it is somewhat of a practice thing,
Mm,
like
100%.
dealing with very strong emotions and being okay with them being there.
Mm,
Because at the start, when you're going through new life events, especially like me, kind of going from being in high school, graduating, being what felt like a lot more like a teenager, into being an adult, moving out of home, doing things on my own, dealing with adult financial responsibilities and work and employment and a lot more there. That was quite overwhelming in the beginning, being in a relationship for the first time. And I probably wasn't very equipped to handle them because I'd never experienced the intensity of some of those feelings
mm,
before. And so it has been a practice thing of like, all right, I felt anxious, probably like 10,000 times in my life at this point, to very extreme levels at times. Like, it's okay. My body's just doing this thing. It's going to keep doing this thing. And that's what it does sometimes. Like,
It's like accepting it with grace to some extent, and then you can start working on it. But if you argue with it and you're like, I shouldn't be like this, then you don't actually improve anything.
yeah. And then I think when it comes down to expressing it, I think once you've felt something 1,000 times, you've probably, or I'm somebody that's maybe given myself time and space to sit in those feelings, reflect upon those feelings. You're then a lot more rationally able to talk about those feelings because one, you've already kind of meditated and thought about it in your own time. And so then it becomes a lot easier to communicate that. And I think as well, the other thing, like I've been in therapy or like seeing a psychologist since I was about 10 years old, on and off, but pretty consistently for well over a decade. And that I think has also been pretty fundamental in me understanding my own feelings and emotions and what's going on and why I might be reacting to things in a certain way, but also my ability to be able to talk about and express them. Like when I meet new people for the first time, or especially if I'm seeing a new psychologist for the first time, they often comment on the fact that I seem to have a good understanding of all of this stuff and I can communicate.
A good psychological background. Yeah, because you
Yeah.
basically studied it by going to therapy. Like going to therapy, a psychologist or a therapist will basically teach you about psychology. That's their job. They're like giving you a crash course in your own emotions and your mind.
Yeah, and I think us being in this relationship, like we talk about everything to death and
Oh my
explore
God. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
every aspect that you can think of ourselves and each other and the dynamic of our relationship together. And we enjoy talking about that stuff. But it's really just been a practice thing of like doing it so much. Like when I first went into like my very first therapy session when I was like 11 years old, I remember my mum came in with me and I didn't really know what to say or do. So she sat in there with me and she told my psychologist at like my new psychologist at the time about me and my interests and why I was there and what was going on. Like I wasn't really able to speak for myself. And it's only after years and years and years of doing this that it's become a lot easier to communicate this stuff and express my feelings in such a way that people don't feel, especially like friends and family don't feel, and you as well, Andy, don't feel dumped on. Like I don't, or I'm a lot better at not dumping like things that I'm going on onto other people. And again, I'm still absolutely not perfect with it. Like there's times where I do find things overwhelming and I might not communicate things super clearly or I might be super emotional. But again, like it's a practice thing. And I'm sure I'm going to be infinitely better at this, a decade from now or two.
Yeah, all of this is like give yourself permission to suck at being expressive, at sharing your emotions and all of that, and slowly work on it over time. I've done enough videos on this channel for men on how to express your emotions and feel your emotions, but still in a masculine way, like how to be vulnerable while still feeling like you're masculine, I guess you would say. So you can just search the channel for vulnerable or emotions or any of that. I've done so much content on that.
Yeah. One maybe quick tip or like simple thing to start with, if this is something that you do want to work on. And a lot of psychologists will say something similar, but using I feel rather than like you did, like accusatory statements,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to conflict resolve or talk through things with other people where they're involved. Saying like, I feel hurt by the thing
Yeah,
that you
or my
said,
emotions right now are telling me, my emotions right now are feeling like, yeah.
rather than saying you did this to me, can help have those discussions
Yeah.
a lot more smoothly.
Basically, this one is about stoicism. So, if you wanted to, any of you men or women that want to improve at expressing your emotions, feeling your emotions, not being scared of your emotions, being able to healthily express them, just study stoicism. So, like my Play to Win video course is literally stoicism. Byron Katie does a lot about stoicism and how to express stuff. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, just any of the old Stoics. So, that's how you work on that. All right, number 5, appearance. In many societies, femininity is often associated with certain aspects of physical appearance, like wearing dresses, makeup, or having longer hair. And that'll change a little bit depending on which culture you're in, obviously. However, it's important to remember that these are not requirements for being feminine. You should express your. Fuck you, don't use the word should. I hate the word should. You are allowed to express yourself in a way that makes you feel comfortable and authentic. Yeah, there are no shoulds. It's funny that they use the word should in a statement that's saying there are no shoulds, but express yourself however you would like.
Yeah, I think this one can be a little bit loaded.
Yeah, people get
Especially
upset
now
about
in
what
like
is feminine dress code and shit. Yeah.
Western society of like what women should be wearing. And it is, as it says here, worth noting like different cultures. Like I think in some African cultures, like having long necks and
Yeah.
like big earlobes is desirable, or like, in traditional Chinese culture, having small feet was desirable.
They
So they used to
literally
like
break the feet and stick it into a little
would
shoe so you can't walk. That's
break the
feminine. Yeah.
bones in toes. Yeah, so our cultures change. Like women used to wear corsets all of the time and to
Squish your guts up so you
can't breathe.
die because you, yeah, yeah,
So this is constantly changing and
yeah.
evolving and will very much depend on the time that you're in. But in, let's just say, Western societies at this point in time, what is still considered traditionally feminine or attractive is probably like big boobs, big ass depending, small waist, long hair, like traditionally like Eastern European features, symmetrical face. Like it's those are what are considered.
Those are the things that you can't work on.
Sure.
So let's focus on like what can you actually improve. Like
Is
if someone out there was like, I want to be a little bit more feminine and work on my appearance, like what have you done to help yours? Because you're definitely more feminine in your appearance than you used to be when you were 18 when I met you.
Yeah, and even that in itself has been a bit of a journey, but I think a lot of the time it can just come down to grooming. If you want some inspiration, actually, something that it's almost like a guilty pleasure, but on YouTube, like 24-hour glow up videos.
Glow up, yeah. So
I introduced you to that term
yeah,
like a month
fucking
ago.
hell, bro. Yeah, it's just like a really quick like self-improvement. There's men that do the same shit too. It's
Mm.
like how do I quickly improve my looks? Lots of the guys in the coaching program do a what you would call a glow up. We do not fucking call it that. But like, just an average guy and it's like, all right, go to the barber shop, get this haircut, trim your beard a little bit in this style, wear this shirt, try wearing this necklace, wear this ring, wear this, make sure the jeans fit a little better, and we'll like glow them up, so to speak. And yeah, that only takes like a day or two. And then suddenly you're
Mm.
like, holy shit, bro, you went from like average dude to like, you look like top 10% now, bro. And you just changed the grooming.
Yeah, you can do a lot, and there's a lot of like stuff, like content out there to
Mm.
help you with this. But like finding a haircut that's flattering for your
Yeah.
face shape,
Yeah.
like changing your hair color, like grooming your facial hair, like your eyebrows, learning how to put on a little bit of makeup if that's something you want to do in a flattering way. And then obviously traditionally more feminine dress is going to be stuff that is like dresses and skirts rather than your traditionally masculine like pants or blouses and things like that. And again, like it very much comes down to like what makes you feel good, because what's
Yeah.
going to be far more attractive is a woman, and in a funny way more feminine, is a woman that feels really good in her body and how she's dressed and how she's looking, whether that's slightly more masculine or not, than the woman who feels like insecure and uncomfortable in what they're wearing. Like that's
100%. Yeah.
not what's going to
Same
be
with guys.
feminine. Because
Lot,
when
you
yeah,
go.
when we first started dating, you encouraged me, I think, to go to one end of the spectrum. Like I've always been into clothes and fashion, and when I met you, and I still am, but was probably into more like out there clothing choices. And so sometimes that meant things that weren't traditionally feminine and were a bit more unusual or had interesting silhouettes. Like think of like fashion runways, they're often a bit odd and you're like, oh wow, that's traditionally pretty. You're like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I liked playing around with that. Obviously not in super extreme ways, but obviously that probably wasn't traditionally like attractive to you because it's not what your idea of femininity was. And when we first started dating and I was a lot more submissive and I was trying to figure myself out and become more confident in my body and be more willing to show off more of my body, you and I would go shopping together and you would be like short, tight skirts, tiny, tight tops, like very young. And we went shopping a few times and I bought a few outfits with you and I would put them on and I felt a bit awful because I was so insecure, and a lot of the time the word that I would use is I feel trashy.
Hmm.
Like I look like a teenage prostitute. Like I and that but that was your idea and like Andy's version of femininity and attractiveness, but that was probably a bit too extreme
Hmm.
for my tastes. And so over the years, like I feel like I've kind of come somewhere in the middle
Hmm.
of I definitely show a lot more skin than I used to and probably have a lot more feminine aspects in the way that I dress. But then sometimes, I want to wear super unflattering baggy things with prints that you say look like curtains or tablecloths, because like I think it's fun. And there's a lot of stuff out there like dressing for the the female gaze versus the male gaze. Like the male gaze, the idea around it is that that's like super tight fitting,
Go
like
show off them assets, girl. Yeah.
yeah, like but like the idea of like traditionally like sexy clothing, whereas feminine dressing for women is often like frills and lace and layers and like more princess dresses versus like Kim K. But again, it comes down to what you feel comfortable in. And I walk down the street with so much more confidence because I like the way that I dress and I feel good in the way that I dress. And that's not a static thing, that changes all the time. So it's about finding what feels good to you. And there's, again, so much out there as well about like dressing for your body type and like how to accentuate like certain positive features or minimize things that you want to hide a little bit. Like it's definitely a learning thing. And this is something that I've been exploring since I was like able to dress myself. Like it's something that I love and feel passionate about and feel really good experimenting with and exploring. And so it's something that I've gotten pretty decent at, if or okay at least, depending on how you want to look at things.
I think we can add in again for the 10th time, dress however the fuck you want to and whatever works with you. And so if you're a woman listening and you're like, I don't want to dress traditionally feminine, then don't. Like, dress however you want. There will be certain guys that are attracted to that look, certain guys that won't be attracted to your look. That's fine. That's like literally how life works. Not everyone is going to be attracted to everybody else. But I think like basically what you're getting at here is if you want to dress like a tomboy or something, you want to dress almost more masculine. If that's what makes you feel good, if that's who you really are, if that's you being honest and having integrity to actually fucking dress how you want to be, that will be more attractive to men because they'll look at that. And the guys that are attracted to tomboys, which there's lots of guys, we've slept with tomboy girls, like tons of them, that dress traditionally masculine. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but she likes who she is. That's who she is. I'm attracted to that. And there are guys that won't be attracted to that. Beautiful. I go through this with lots of my coaching clients where people will come to the group and they have this like traditional male sense of how they should dress. And most of the time they're trying to dress like a fuck boy. Like they're literally like, I have to dress like a fuck boy. Like the fuck boy, nothing wrong with being a fuck boy, but I have to dress like a fuck boy. And I have to dress exactly like that, like a player or a fuck boy or someone like that. And if I don't dress like that, no women will be interested in me. And we're like, who the fuck told you that? The reason why dressing like a fuckboy can work is because the guy feels confident in wearing that. But if you dress like a fuckboy and you're like, this doesn't feel like me, I feel like I'm faking it, I feel like this is not who I am and not who I want to be, I feel like I'm lying, then you'll hold back. You won't go up to women confidently. You don't have to be confident, but like you won't go up to women with that authentic, honest energy and say, hey, here's who I am. I like who I am. If you don't like me, that's cool. I'll go talk to the next woman. No, you'll be weird because you're like, oh, I'm insecure. I don't feel comfortable in this. I hope she doesn't reject me. Oh, this doesn't feel like me. So we encourage the guys in the program, figure out who you want to be and how you want to dress. We say the same to, the few women that we've had in the program. Figure out who you want to be. Be that person. We're not here to tell you who to be.
Yeah, really nice exercises like thinking or of like your future or ideal self.
Yeah.
What are they wearing? What are they doing? And you can do this with like lots of aspects, like what's their daily routine. But for the sake of this point, like what do they wear? What do they look like?
What would my perfect ideal self wear? Yeah.
And then just go towards that. Like for a tangible example, a previous client of yours who is now a coach in the program, Ed, went through this exact same thing where like he was figuring out how to dress himself to attract women. And Cam, another coach in the program at the time, because he's more around fashion and things like that, encouraged that more traditional,
like almost
fuckboy
fuckboy,
look.
just like popular.
Yeah, it's just
guy.
like trendy, neutral, generally attractive, suits most people look because it's easy and it looks decent on most people. But I remember you telling me at the time that Ed really wasn't resonating with that at all. And it was a struggle for him. And I totally understand that feeling of going outside and you feel like a fucking idiot because
you feel like a fraud. You feel like this isn't me. I'm just putting on a persona because that's what I think will get me laid.
Yeah, you feel stupid. You feel out of place. You don't feel comfortable. And it's funny how much just the clothing on your back can change some of that
because it's the
stuff.
biggest expression of self that we have in society at this point in time. Like it is the biggest expression of yourself. more than
Yeah.
your car, more than your phone, more than your social media, more than your apartment, more than anything, because it's the thing that literally everybody sees. It's the first thing they see is your outward appearance. And so, yeah, I would experiment a little bit, try different appearances. Sometimes you got to mess around a bit before you figure out who you are. That might take you a few years even, but I would go more towards who you want to be. And that might change over time.
Yeah.
Like you're going to go through cycles too. I think that's the other thing that guys maybe people put pressure on themselves. They'll often come to the coaching program and be like, all right, I have to know how I'm going to dress for the rest of my life. And it's like, bro, just try some shit on that feels good. Like you don't have to figure out who you are. Just wear some clothes that make you feel handsome, like a handsome little boy, you know? You walk down the street, you're like, wow, I'm a handsome man. Wear that. You don't have to figure out your fucking identity through your clothes. That's going to change over time anyway.
And yeah, wrapping up the story about Ed is that now he's found something that like
He
a way to dress
dresses
where
like
he
a
feels
hippie. He
comfortable.
dresses like bohemian, like a hippie.
Yeah,
and
but like
that
a well-dressed
suits-
hippie.
Yeah, like a really handsome hippie. Yeah. And that suits him so well. That's him, who he is as a person. He's like a libertarian. He's free love. You know, that's just him.
Yeah. So find whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
So number 6 is communication. Effective communication, especially when it comes to listening and empathizing with others, is often associated with femininity.
Yeah, we already covered this. This just feels like a repeat of the empathy one. I don't think
And expression as well.
I don't think there's much more to say on this one. But yeah, having nice communication can feel great. I'd say the same for men. Communication skills can help. Number 7, intuition. Many cultures associate femininity with being intuitive or being able to understand things instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning.
So this is one we're reacting to these fairly live, but like 10 seconds ago, Andy, you just said you had a lot to say about this. I'm going to guess what that might be. But with a lot of this stuff, like you can't necessarily learn intuition. It's not a skill to practice. I think in this case, more about having a lot of conversations with people, being around people a lot, and then after practicing it a bajillion times, you then get better at picking up on certain cues. But just having intuition is not really something that you can do.
Yeah, I know.
It's
Yeah.
the steps before that you have to practice to the point where you kind of develop some sense of intuition. And so I wouldn't put pressure on yourself in order to be feminine to like magically have some sense of intuition. Just like I said before, like some people don't naturally have a maternal instinct. I don't. And to expect that of you to just have this thing that you don't have, it's not going to help you. And so it might be worth saying you can practice the things that it would take to help you develop intuition when it comes to like other people or how to respond in certain situations. But that just comes down to lots of socializing, being in lots of situations, and then getting a feel for it.
Yeah, okay. So this is my exact sort of, I guess I would say, contention with a lot of mainstream advice. A lot of you know, have felt like this before too. You will ask the mainstream, which ChatGPT is just trained on mainstream books, mainstream articles, mainstream internet, all of that. You will ask the mainstream for advice. We specifically asked ChatGPT, if someone wants to be more feminine, can you please tell us how they can be more feminine? And for a lot of these, ChatGPT has just said, have the character trait of femininity. And you're like, but I don't have that fucking character trait. That's why I fucking asked you for advice. How do I develop it? And it's like, just do it. Just have it. That doesn't help anyone. And so the same thing with dating advice. A lot of, especially towards men, dating advice will be like, be confident. And you're like, I asked you for advice, motherfucker. I didn't ask you to tell me what traits someone who's already done this would have. That doesn't help me. How do I just be confident? That's what I'm asking you for advice on. Tell me how to be more confident. The answer is give yourself permission to suck. Take some baby steps towards your fears a tiny bit every single day, and then just keep going. What those baby steps could be is like, I'm going to go to an improv class once a week and just practice there. I'll go to a stand-up class and start practicing there. That will build your confidence. I will go to meetup.com and start meeting people, and then I'll talk to them and I'll socialize. That will build my confidence. I'll go outside and I'll talk to one stranger a day and have a conversation. That will build my confidence. I'll push myself out of my comfort zone with hobbies and activities that I've never done before, like on meetup.com. That would build my confidence. Like any of that shit would build your confidence. So same thing with this one, intuition. Just be intuitive. Fuck you, that doesn't help. How do I become intuitive? Well, you would learn about empathy. You would practice your empathy, practice talking to other people. You would learn human psychology. You would read all of the books that we recommend. You'd take my Play to Win video course. You would start asking other people, hey, how are you feeling right now? And then they would tell you, and you go, oh, okay, I wonder how I could have guessed that. That's essentially what intuition is. It's guessing. How can you possibly guess something that you don't know about? And so you'd have to learn and understand, read books on psychology, study stoicism, take my Play to Win video course, all of this kind of stuff. But really, it's just about asking. I would say intuition is one of those things where if you happen to have intuition or you have built intuition, fantastic. But I would absolutely say this is one of those ones that I fully disagree with. I think this is bullshit. Like, honestly, I think this is unhelpful advice on how to be more feminine. Because I think what stuff like this does, be intuitive, is just make all the women who are not intuitive, which is 99.99999% of the human population. Most people can't read minds, which is what intuition is. Most people can't just without fucking asking or conscious reasoning just somehow intuit a situation. That's like some advanced spiritual shit or some advanced self-improvement shit or some advanced like psychology shit. You have to like literally have studied psychology for like 10 years. Even me at this point, with all the coaching I've done and all the thousands of books I've read on this stuff, I can understand things instinctively and intuitively maybe 50% of the time.
Yeah, and then like others, I think there's also a case in people like, oh, I'm really good at like reading cues from other people, and I'm like good at being intuitive, and half of the time they're fucking wrong.
They're just wrong. You're just straight up wrong. That's what I'm saying.
Just like
I'm wrong.
stuff up.
If I try and guess, which is what intuition is, I will be wrong about you all 50% of the time. It's why I just don't try and guess. I say, how are you feeling right now? What would you like from me? What can I do for you? Do you want to talk about this? What do you actually want? What are you trying to communicate to me? I don't even fuck around with intuition because you're right. It will straight up be wrong. And it feels like one of those things that people who hang crystals from their room and, study astrology and all of that, nothing against that, by the way, but like, it feels like one of those things that goes with that sort of new age spirituality of like, I just have intuition and I can just listen to my chakras. And again, nothing against any of that stuff, but I'm saying lots of those people in those circles will then go, I have intuition and I just listen to my heart of what the other person is saying. And you're like, yeah, but how often are you right? Well, most of the time I'm not right, but like,
I think people wouldn't openly admit that, but
yeah, it's like palm card reading or tarot card reading, or I can tell your future. It's like, bro, you're just straight up guessing, or you're doing cold reading, like blah 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 blah.
yeah, and I think this is something that shows up a hell of a lot in dating as well, like what
Oh,
she
fuck
actually
me, bro.
means, or like what
Yeah,
these signals mean, or like what this text
yep.
means.
So much dating advice is like, how can I mind read what the other person is seeing? Look at these 10 different signals, indicators of interest. Well, she played with her hair, so that must mean, why don't you just fucking ask her what that means? And she'll go, my head was itchy, that's why I scratched it. And you go, oh, so my intuition was fucking bullshit because I'm literally trying to mind read, and you cannot know the contents of someone else's heart without verification, without asking, without checking. Yeah, I really don't like this one, in case you couldn't tell. Because the reason why I get passionate about this one is this is the cause of so many people suffering, especially in dating, like you said, but just in general communication and connection with other human beings. They will be like, why can't I intuitively know what the other person is thinking? How many fucking women, you even have some friends who do this. Women will go to their
I
female
think
friends.
it's so common though. You have clients that do this, and
They'll
people,
go like,
especially with dating, people come to you and ask like, "What do you think this means?" Whether that's like,
what is my boyfriend thinking? What do you think he's thinking? How the fuck should I know? I don't fucking know. Why don't you ask him?
yeah,
Like, what the fuck? How am I? And so many times coaching clients, some of you in the audience, and it's okay that you do this. Like, I know I'm getting passionate, but because this is a big deal. This is like why people suffer. But so many people will be like, Andy, like this girl didn't text me back. Like, why do you think she didn't text me back? Oh my fucking God, how am I supposed to know? Like, what the fuck? You think I have some like para fucking normal communication line with her and I can just telepathically read her fucking mind and be like, well, it's because of this. And so many people on the internet will peddle their bullshit, especially with dating advice. They'll peddle their bullshit and be like, here's what she's thinking when that happens. And because they want to appear like the expert. But the truth is, any actual expert will tell you this. You cannot read another human being's mind. You can sometimes guess and you will sometimes be correct. And maybe you can get really good at guessing and you become correct 60% of the time. That would be an amazing like achievement. If you could intuit people's minds and their emotions and what they're thinking and what they're wanting, if you could do it 60% of the time, that would be God tier. But you can't even get close. I'll tell you that right now. As someone that's been working on this stuff for the last like 10 fucking years, maybe 20 years, like you can't get close to 60%. And even if you were right 60% of the time, you're wrong 40% of the time. I'd rather just never even play that game and say to the person, what are you thinking right now? What do you want? Yo, what do you want? Do you want to make out with me right now? Instead of like, oh, I have to try and read the signals and see if she'll let me kiss her. When's the right time? When do I make a move? Why don't you just say, yo, you're fucking hot. Can I kiss you? Do you want to kiss me? And then she'll say yes, or she'll say no. Or like, how do I know when it's the right time to invite her back to my apartment so that I can minimize my rejection rate and my flake rate and my, oh, I got to make sure that I pick the right moment. Why don't you just say, yo, you're fucking hot. Do you want to come back to my place and mess around a bit and make out and fuck each other's buttholes or whatever you kids are doing? They're all fucking each other's buttholes.
Anal's
hot.
getting more and more
Anal's
popular.
hot as fuck.
You don't like anal that much.
What are you talking about? How many times have I said, this is personal stuff, but how many, hey, listen, everyone don't listen right now. How many times have I said to you,
Yeah, go for
okay.
it.
How many times have I said to you, I would like you to practice with the butt plugs so that you can be ready to receive my, I'm not going to, but
You don't say it like that. You just say so we can have anal.
yeah, that's what I do say. I'm trying to keep it PG for the YouTube.
That's true.
Yeah, see? Fucking. Anyway, intuition, bunch of bullshit. Literally, and I think women especially get so fucking like they finger their fucking clits thinking about like, oh, imagine if I could just intuit anything.
Knows sex very well. Can finger a clit.
Shut up. So how many women are just like, oh, if I could just mind read, I just listen to my feminine intuition. You mean your fucking bullshit that you're just making up? My mind reading superpowers. If you have mind reading superpowers, go out and fucking use them for good instead of, oh, I fucking like think that this person is feeling this. No, you can't think anything. Again, you can get close to like 50% correct intuition. You can definitely get a feel of how someone is feeling. If someone shuts down, like this is something that I have worked on and I think I'm pretty decent at intuiting what someone is feeling, but I cannot fully get 100% of the way there. I can't know everything that they're thinking. And I think it is far, far more helpful in dating, life, friendships, etc., to just not even worry about intuition and instead get better at your, the previous one that we talked about, communication. If you get better at your communication and say, what are you feeling right now? That's your fucking intuition. And again, intuition, you can get, I reckon, about 50% roughly of the way to understanding someone else. So sure, that can be helpful. But I think the way that you get there is with communication. Whereas I think what a lot of people try and do with intuition is they're like, all right, so I'm just going to try and guess a whole bunch of times what other people are thinking. Go out and try that. And what you find is that people fucking hate you. Because what you're essentially doing with intuition is you're trying to tell other people how they feel. And people fucking hate that.
Especially when you're wrong. People are like, fuck
People
off.
fucking
You
hate
don't know
that.
me.
How many times did I, because I tried to do intuition too over the years, where I would it almost sounds like you're coming from a holier than thou place where I'd be like, oh, I can see right now that you're feeling a lot of anger. And the
Or like
person's like,
sometimes you're like, you're not being honest with me, but you're actually upset with me. And you're like,
my intuition is
off.
telling me that you're holding back right now and you're not fully sharing everything with me. And the other person's like, fuck you. Don't tell me how I feel. Or my intuition right now is telling me that you actually want to have sex with me. And that's what my intuition is saying. It's like, you cocky fuck. No, who the fuck are you? Even if you're right, I don't like to be told how I feel. Basically, no one likes to be told how they feel. And so what you'll find with a lot of psychologists and any decent therapist, they have decent intuition because they've been doing it for years. They're probably at the rate of like 60% correct with their intuition. But what they'll do is they'll feel that intuition, they'll get a sense for what the person is feeling and what might help them, and they'll ask a question. They'll say, are you feeling some anger right now? Are you feeling some shame right now? I'm getting the sense that there's shame in your thing. Do you want to talk about that? I'm having a feeling that you might be feeling like this. But I've noticed in my own coaching program, I still do this to this day sometimes. I will still fall into the trap of intuition. I've done it recently where I will tell the person how they're feeling and I'll be like, you're feeling shame and guilt right now, aren't you? And then sometimes they'll be like, no. And then I'm like, oh, fucking Andy, stop trying to guess their fucking emotions. Like, just because you think they're feeling shame, you might even be correct, but you telling that person how they're feeling is not the gateway to communication. That just often makes them pissed off at you or annoyed or shut down because they might not be fully self-aware enough to admit it. So even if you are correct in your intuition, let's say you're some magical mystic guru who can intuit 100% of the time, you can just mind read. You have telepathy, you can just mind read people. They might not be self-aware enough to agree with you. You might literally be correct. I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've been correct in my intuition of someone else, right? And then I say it to them, and they just straight up, flat out disagree because Maybe they're not self-aware enough to agree with that.
Yeah, or maybe they're annoyed at you and they just want to be contrary. 'Cause it's like,
Yeah.
fuck off.
Yeah. They're just in a bad mood. And so even if I'm correct, I'm like, hey, I'm getting the sense that my intuition is telling me blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, wrong, no, go away. I hate you, stupid, fuck off. Like, they just, so your intuition wasn't very good that you couldn't pick that up. Like, so I've just come to see that intuition is one of those things where I just disconnect myself from the other person if I try and tell them how they're feeling or I try and read. And so intuition can be helpful. Like, yes, fine. Sometimes you will get a read on someone. I think my intuition is pretty good. I think I'm someone that, I don't know, 40% of the time, 50% of the time, maybe 60. I can get a feel for what someone's intention is, what they actually are trying to say, what their feelings are, all of that. I've been doing this for long enough, but I try my best, and I'm not perfect with this. I try my best to never tell them how they're feeling because, like you said, they often just shut down and say, wrong, go away, fuck you, don't tell me how I feel. So have some intuition, sure, but I would not fucking worry about this for femininity. All right, there's my TED talk, and we've dismantled intuition. And the eighth and final recommendation from ChatGPT or the mainstream is resilience. While it may not be a traditionally associated trait like associated with femininity, resilience is essential. Being able to face adversity with strength and poise is an important aspect of masculinity. And, sorry, I just did a faux pas there. Important aspect of femininity and, I was going to say, masculinity. This is just like helpful for every human being on the planet.
Yeah, this is very similar to what we were saying earlier about stoicism and
Yeah.
almost ties into what we were saying about grace as well. Like basically being able to handle situations
Yeah.
in such a way that is, I guess, capable or like competent. Like, I think when I'm thinking of traditional ideas of femininity, I often think of like motherhood and like
Mm.
what a good traditional mother
Sure, yeah.
looks like. And I think aspects of that is like being able to like handle shit in certain situations for the sake of others, like being able to take some stuff on and handle situations and have a level of resilience, being able to kind of continue forth with things because there is like something to be done or like a mission to be had or kids to look after or whatever it might be. And as you said, I don't think it's something that's traditionally associated with like the word resilience associated with femininity, but obviously it can help make a well-rounded woman, just like a lot of these traits can help make a well-rounded man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if you want more help with stoicism, again, none of this stuff actually gives you any fucking advice. It just tells you like the traits, like be confident, be resilient, be appearance, be pretty. Like that doesn't help. So how can someone actually be more resilient? My Play to Win video course is probably one of the best places to start. It is literally called How I Built a Winner's Mindset, How I Built That Positive Mindset. Books like Loving What Is by Byron Katie, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. That's quite a resilient stoicism book. Any of the old Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, you can find all their stuff for free on YouTube. You can just go and watch, their stuff or stuff that they wrote. So yeah, any of that stoicism stuff, I would just start reading that and then start practicing that stuff. This is really a practice. Like resilience is a practice. Life might kick you down, or it might feel like life is kicking you down sometimes. You get really bothered by stuff, but you pick yourself back up and you keep on going. Honestly, like I think my Play to Win video course is probably the best place to go for this. Like literally the whole book is, or the whole course is stoicism. So you can pay whatever you want for that, even if that's $1. I would start with that above all else. But if you buy that, you need to actually put into practice what is in there. Don't just watch it or read it and go like, yay, I learned about stoicism. It's a practice. It's a daily practice. It's like when you're cut off in traffic and you honk the horn and you're fucking fuming and you're angry and you're like, fuck this motherfucker cutting me off. You take a deep breath and you go, okay, how can I see this in a different way? All right, this is a really good chance for me to practice my stoicism. If you can start to see everything in your life as a great chance to practice your resilience and your stoicism, man, the world feels like a much kinder, much more happy and peaceful place. So it's just a practice. You got to practice. It took us years, and we are not perfect with our stoicism. Look at me teeing off on the previous point about intuition. That wasn't very stoic of me, was it? That's okay. Like, you don't have to be perfectly resilient or stoic, You just do your best.
And our little outro from ChatGPT is, remember, these are just traditional perceptions of femininity, and they might not resonate with everyone. There are many ways to express femininity, and it's important to find what feels true to you. Authenticity is the key to embodying femininity in a way that feels right for you. Being more feminine is about being more yourself, expressing your identity, and living in a way that makes you feel most comfortable and fulfilled.
Yeah, basically what we said at the start, and the same thing I said in the masculinity video. It's like figure out who the hell you want to be and be more of that person over time. You know, it's all right if you don't necessarily fit every single dot point about femininity. It's also okay if you want to be some of those things. Like, let's say you listen to all of that, everything we just said, and you're like, yeah, I do want to dress a little bit more pretty. Like, that would make me feel good. I want to dress a little bit more like me, but I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, you just take some baby steps. Like, you don't have to be perfect with any of this stuff. Femininity, just like masculinity, is sort of like a road that you travel. It's something that you improve at. You can be a little bit more yourself, a little bit more authentic, a little bit more feminine or masculine every single day. You don't have to be perfect. Right. If anyone wants my help with any of this, obviously we have a beautiful coaching program. We have that Play to Win video course I mentioned, and links are in the description below to that. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, go figure out who the hell you want to be. You don't have to listen to our advice. To be very clear, everything we just said here is what we like to do and what works for us, but you don't have to listen to any of that. You don't have to listen to ChatGPT. You don't have to listen to anyone. No one's going to tell you what to do because you're a badass warrior. Or what would a warrior woman be? A warrior-ess. You're a badass warrior and a badass warrior-ess. Great contribution, Imogen. I appreciate that. Great outro, Emmy. Anything you want to say to... All right, we've just fallen off a cliff there. Great outro. This is the worst outro we've ever had ever. You know what? I'm quitting. I'm done. I'm fucking done with podcasts.